right off the bat, what was the catalyst for your love of travel and that kind of developing?
So when I was when I was between my junior and senior years of high school, I had a chance to go to Oxford, England, and study for a month. So it was this really cool opportunity where you had a chance to live in the dorms, be by yourself, and we did classes, and the program was with kids from all over the US and even other countries as well. So it was a really cool opportunity to be away from home for the first time and to really explore another country. Going into it, I had thought, oh, England's not going to be all that different from the US, right? They speak the same language, and obviously while there are a lot of similarities, there are so many things that are different too. So it was just really mind-blowing for me to be in a place that on the surface seems okay, well, they speak English and there's not all that many differences, but to realize that even their English words mean different things than our English words, stuff as simple as like, they don't have zucchini, they have courgettes, and that's just like the very base kind of thing. But just learning the history and the culture of the place, and having a chance to experience something like that so deeply for such a long period of time, and when you're 17, kind of everything is so formative. So it really just sort of imprinted on me that love of learning about other people and other cultures, even when you think, they might not be all that different from you. There's still so much to learn.
Absolutely. That's so cool. And I love that when you're little, or not little, but when you're younger, especially in high school, like you really feel like the world and your environment is kind of the way things are. And then when you go out and even a country that you think is going to be so similar, seeing how many differences there are, it probably just really opened your mind and allowed you to see the possibilities.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how you are, but you hear songs on the radio and you can be like, oh, that came out in 1999, and you like mark things directly to like certain periods in high school or middle school or whatever. And there are certain things about that time in life that just imprint on you, and you can mark them to the exact time, the exact period, just because, everything is so open and you're forming so many new experiences and so many new opinions about things. And so I think that it had, an even greater impact on me because of how old I was and the first time away from home and all that sort of thing. So that really had a significant impact on kind of just what I wanted to do and how I wanted to approach the world as far as being curious about other people and other places.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've noticed doing these interviews, and you're the fourth one that I've done, that it seems most people, when they're doing a passion project, like starting their own business or a blog, there's something that happened in their formative years that kind of opened a door within them, and it
For sure.
almost like feels kind of meant to be.
Absolutely.
So during your husband's study abroad in Europe, I know you mentioned in your blog post that you guys, you got into buying a house and into careers and life, and you weren't traveling as much, and you got this opportunity. What place or city or what was it that kind of changed the game and made you rediscover this passion that you had?
I mean, the passion was always there, but life kind of takes over. It's certainly very easy to get caught up, just emotionally, but also for obligations in terms of, you got to go to work, you get deep into what you're doing there. There's obligations at home, there's always something else to do. There's always more work. There's always something to clean. There's always, just all that daily stuff that takes over. And if you don't make things like travel or whatever it is that happens to make you happy and light your fire, if you don't make those things a priority, it's really easy for the mundane sort of daily stuff to take over. And at that point, we had been married for a couple of years. We were deep into our careers, and it was just, focus was elsewhere, even though we wanted it to be on travel and on exploring and doing things like that. My husband grew up as a big traveler. His parents would take him on huge road trips around the country. And he had visited all 50 states by the time he graduated from high school, and all of them, all but Alaska and Hawaii twice. And he had spent a lot of time abroad. He did a study abroad in college in Nepal.
Mm.
So he was a huge world traveler, but it was just that, the way that life goes, and, the stuff you would really like to be doing kind of takes a backseat. And so that's kind of where we were in life. And it was sort of ironic that grad school, which in and of itself is a huge time suck and obligation, was kind of the door that allowed us to go back into things, because he had to do it for school. And there was no way that he was going to go to Italy and I was going to let him leave me at home. That was not going to happen, for a lot of reasons, but one of which was the fact that it was over my birthday. And yeah, so he had the chance to go to Venice and Milan and Rome and all this really cool stuff. So I guess I should say, as far as, what was the most interesting thing to me with regards to that trip was everything. I mean, Rome, Venice and Milan and Florence are absolutely, incredible world-class cities. But Rome turned out to be the place that we just absolutely fell in love with beyond everything else. I'm a huge history nerd, and I took Latin in high school. So I had a huge affinity for ancient Rome and all the history and culture. And, who doesn't love a really good glass of wine and pasta as well? Yeah. So it was just a really incredible trip in time. And it just made us realize that, we really just had to put it on the calendar and commit to it. Otherwise, life was going to just keep going and time would pass and we wouldn't still be doing the things that we wanted to do. And so it became a mission of ours to figure out how to explore the world and do all of that stuff at the same time that we had to, fulfill our work and other obligations.
I love that. It's so important to make the time for the things that you really love, because like you said, it's so easy to get caught up in life. And then it's like, what is the purpose of life? Like, what are you working towards if you're not doing things that bring you happiness and joy too?
Yeah, because the time's going to pass either way. So
absolutely. I love that. That's so good. So I kind of have a follow-up question, talking about your husband, how he grew up road tripping and traveling. And I had seen on your blog too that you mentioned, even with COVID and living back in the States, that you make a lot more effort now to do like weekend warrior trips where you're just kind of going somewhere nearby and driving there. Do you have any tips for that, especially with everything with COVID and things shutting down possibly again? Any tips for people to continue doing their love of travel while all these other extenuating circumstances are happening?
To be honest, I really don't think it's responsible to do that. We've taken a couple of small road trips in Pennsylvania. We share one border with Maryland and the other border with New York. And so we took, a 2-hour road trip to Maryland and a 2-hour road trip to New York. But we really kind of tried to stay away from encouraging people to travel too much. It's a really, awkward situation as a travel writer, because it's my job, and it makes it really difficult to know what to share on social and kind of how to talk about things. We had there was a brief window of time around June or July where we thought things might kind of start to open back up. And we were just really fortunate with our timing, and we had a chance to take a trip to Iceland. But, I think it's really dicey to kind of recommend that these days. So we kind of try to stay away from that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's super fair, and a very, I think, intelligent decision to make as a travel blogger to, have that boundary and that line that for other people, so that, I don't know, to just do what you can.
Yeah. It gets, unfortunately, the vaccine and everything has been so politicized. I and a lot of my travel writer friends haven't really shied away from the fact, saying that, we don't feel that it's a responsible thing to do if you're not vaccinated, to protect yourself and to protect everywhere that you're going. But, from a practical perspective, it's not, we don't feel that it's particularly safe. And I think you also just open yourself up to a lot of criticism, and I think you have to consider, if you're doing a road trip to the nearby town, it's different than if you're picking up and, going to another country where they may not have the healthcare system, you may be overburdening situations, that are different on the ground. They may not have had access to the vaccine as much as we have. There's just so many things to consider that we have opted to really err on the side of caution.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very fair. And I think a smart decision to make. Um, so out of all the places that you visited, what would you consider was your favorite and why?
That's always such a hard question. And it's always, the number one question that we get.
Yeah.
Usually it's the place that I went last, because it's the thing that I'm most excited about most recently. I would say, there are places that we really love. The one behind me, which is Bruges, is one of them. Had a chance to go there a few times, but the place that I guess I have two answers. One is kind of what I was saying earlier, Rome. It was the first place that I really had a chance to, after Oxford, to really fall in love with from a travel perspective. There's just so much there with the history and the culture and the food, and and it's also such a lovely and vibrant city that there's always something new to explore. You have the chance to go back and uncover something new every time. So that's one. But the place that I would say probably had the greatest impact on me is we had the chance to go to Egypt shortly after the Arab Spring and the revolution there. So it was a really unusual time. There were not a lot of tourists. We had planned the trip before. It was a trip we had bought for my mom's birthday. And so we purchased the trip in December for the following summer, and the revolution was in January. So for a long time, we didn't know whether we were going to be able to go. We didn't know what the situation was going to be on the ground. It was the most significant thing that had happened there in decades, and the fall of the government and all kinds of things. But to get to go felt like such a privilege and such a unique opportunity in the first place, given the timing. But just to stand at the base of the Great Pyramid, to see these temples, with these massive soaring columns and hieroglyphs and all these different things, and to think about how all of that stuff came to be without obviously any of the things that we have in the modern world, and the ingenuity and the history and the culture, and to just be, dwarfed by the sheer size and accomplishment and all of those things, was just unbelievable. I mean, there's still, things that are 5,000 years old, they still have the original color on them, things that are just incredible. And then, culturally, it was the place for me at the time that was the most different from, my regular experience, having the opportunity to really get to know our tour guide, who was a Muslim woman who had a master's degree. She was the only woman who worked for the tour company that we were with, and she was fully covered. And so to get to talk to her about her experiences as both a traditional Muslim woman on the one hand, but also very, very different on the other hand, to be single and have a master's degree and be the only woman employed for this company and all of that. So, just getting to know the people and seeing all this stuff, it was really remarkable, and definitely something that I recommend, for people to do something every once in a while that just has the opportunity to completely blow your mind.
Yeah, put things into perspective. I mean, you really do take advantage, or it's so easy to take advantage of all of the rights, especially that women have here in
Yeah.
this country. And especially, I mean, everything that's going on in Afghanistan, and not to make this political or anything,
Yeah.
but it really is a privilege to be a woman in a country where we have rights, and we can have an education and can choose what to wear and who to marry. It's really sad that that's so much of that is still happening in the world.
I mean, travel is inherently political. You're
Yeah.
choosing where you feel safe going. You're choosing where you feel comfortable spending your money, and that it has to do with to what degree you're supporting certain regular people, but also supporting governments. A lot of tourism entities are government run. And then for me, thinking about, coming back and how I'm going to interpret that on my blog, and the way that you speak about the people, and, as you're saying, the way that, women are treated, or minorities are treated, or, what the situation is for LGBT individuals. It's all inherently political. And I think that's an important thing to consider as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great tip. Thank you. Sorry, my cat. um, so in your blog post, how to make the most out of your vacation time, you mentioned the importance of leaving stress at home so that you can maximize your vacation. And I was wondering if you and Lance, if you guys have any tips for how you guys mentally prepare and help to leave your stress behind so that you can maximize your vacation.
I mean, that's such a hard thing, right? I think, there's practical things that we try to do. We try to leave the house, as clean as we can, so that when we come home, it's not, a disaster. Because there's always that effect of, you go on vacation, and like, how long does that halo effect last? So we try to make sure that we're not returning to something that's, in a terrible state of disarray. Although I have to admit that, that's a goal. It doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is trying to, if you're able to minimize the amount of times that you have to check in with work. Trying to make sure that whoever is around to cover for you, that you have a good plan in place while you're gone. I think, because for us in the past, most of the stresses have revolved around needing to be available for work. And so, you always sort of have your mind in both places. And when that's the case, it's really hard to relax, which is obviously the point of vacation, and people have to be able to recharge to some degree. So I would say that's probably the main thing, is just trying to have a good plan in place for when we leave. We also try to plan our trips with some specifically relaxing parts of them if we can. We discovered early on that when you, for instance, move cities every day, or are, pounding the pavement for 13 hours a day, on walking tours, or whatever it may be, there's a huge desire to want to see everything, but it's also possible to come back tireder than when you left. So we always try to keep that in mind in our planning. We really like things like hot springs, or exploring some of the local spas, or things like that. So if we have the opportunity to do that, depending on where we are, we always try to schedule like something like that in. So it's we're doing something, but it's also, a bit of downtime and feels more relaxing. So we kind of try to keep that in mind when we're planning.
That's awesome. Those are some really, really great tips. Thank you so much. I love that. Um, and then, so in that same blog post, you also talked about travel splurges and how some are really just worth the upgrade. What are some of those that you would recommend just to make your life easier so you're more likely to keep doing it?
I think, if you're a frequent traveler and it justifies it, we really value having lounge access. It's really nice to just have a place where you can put your stuff down for a few minutes and not have to worry about always having an eye on it, grab a bite to eat, have internet access. Certainly it's particularly helpful in instances where, you might have flight delays or other travel difficulties. So the lounge is definitely an important thing for us. It's not practical or necessary for everybody, but if you're somebody who flies frequently, it's definitely helpful. Another thing, kind of on similar lines, is if you are traveling frequently, to develop that loyalty with a hotel chain and get club access. It's particularly helpful if you're staying somewhere for like 4 or 5 days, because oftentimes they have free breakfast, and if you're at a hotel where, say it's, if it's me and my husband, and we're staying for 5 days, breakfast at the hotel might run you $25 a day. $50 a day for breakfast is absurd. And so to have access, to a club or something like that, it actually saves a lot of money in the long run. So those are kind of a couple of the things that we do. And like I said, with the hot springs or an occasional spa visit, depending on where we are, little things like that along the way,
Yeah.
kind of make the overall experience more enjoyable.
That's so cool. You have so many good tips. It's a good thing you do this for a living. I love that. Awesome. So what advice would you give to someone who may love to travel, but they haven't gone anywhere in a while and they would like to get started back up again? And I mean, this is putting COVID
Sure,
aside, like in the
sure.
future or something, but
Um, I think if you have the funds for it, pick a date and put something on the calendar and commit to it. I mean, it's both simple and complicated at the same time, because I know that it's certainly not that easy for a lot of people. But I think that was really what we discovered, was the secret for us, was just to make it a priority. And once you put it on the calendar, once you request the time off, you're kind of locked into it. And as if you're a person who has trouble breaking away, I think that that's the best thing, is sort of make it a non-negotiable as
yeah,
well, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to South Africa and safari for 2 weeks. You can take a long weekend and, go to the beach that's nearest you, or the mountain, or, that town that you have always wanted to explore. It doesn't have to be this like grand, massive thing that costs thousands of dollars. If you don't have the funds for it, I think putting a plan in place is equally important. Starting to figure out where you want to go and how much it's going to cost, and chipping away at it as you're able. One thing that we've done in the past, not as much now as we used to, but I have a lot of friends who still do it quite a bit, is travel hacking stuff. So whether it's as simple as getting a credit card for a hotel chain or an airline and racking up points that way, or if you want to get much more elaborate into it, there's a lot of folks who churn through different offers and promotions and stuff like that, and you would be surprised how quickly you can get a free night or work your way to a free ticket or things like that. It doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to be thousands and thousands of dollars. You can come up with fun things to do that don't cost an arm and a leg and don't take you away from your life for weeks at a time, and still kind of feel like you had a break.
yeah, I love that. And just to plug your blog too, you have your travel itineraries and the write-ups. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Are they called itineraries?
Yeah,
That yeah,
we have a number of itineraries, and we have a lot of posts just about things to do in
yeah,
different cities that you can kind of take the best of what seems interesting to you, depending on how much time you have.
yeah. And I think that is so helpful. I'm somebody, I love to travel, but when it comes to going somewhere new, it's so overwhelming researching like
Yeah,
what to do and where to eat, and just knowing that your blog and other travel blogs, they have those recommendations, and you guys have been there and been there multiple times to some of these places.
yeah.
I think that's so helpful for people to feel so much less overwhelming to book something and put it on the calendar.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to travel blogs, people shouldn't hesitate to reach out to. I mean, whether it's Facebook or email or comments on the blog, many people spend a lot of their time engaging with their readers. That's why we do what we do. So, reach out, ask questions, ask me where this place is. I'll tell you all about it and what to do when you get there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what led to you pursuing Travel Addicts full time?
So, I had over a 10-year career in marketing and PR, and was very deep into that. I was a vice president at my job, and as jobs sometimes do, I had been there for about 5 or 6 years, and it had kind of run its course, and I knew that it was time to move on. And so my options were, and at that time, I would say we had the blog for probably about 8 years at that point. I mean, we started a long time ago. So this was a long time passion project. But it was just clear to me that it was time to move on from my job. So my options were to go to a different company. And the most likely one that I probably would have tried to move to was actually a place where a number of my coworkers were also going. So it was kind of go to this other company with many of the same people that I've worked with for the last 6 years, and do, more or less the same thing that I had been doing, or to really take a crazy leap and, see if investing the additional time and funds would allow us to turn this thing, that we had started into, something that really made us money and that we could, work out long term.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. You took a risk on yourself. I love
Oh,
that.
yes. It's a significant one, but it's worked out, I think.
Yeah, good for you. That's so exciting. And that's so encouraging for so many other people, and especially so many people who have lost their jobs with COVID. When there's something that you're really passionate about and it gives you energy to do, and especially you had the business, or you had the background in marketing, it's like, it was a smart investment in yourself and also in your passion. And
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time because, before the last 18 months, I think, COVID has changed so many things in negative ways for people, but I think it's also opened up so many other opportunities. I mean, just the fact that we're having this conversation and you're sitting in your living room,
yeah,
that wouldn't be something, most likely that would have happened in the past. And so I think it's opened up, if not direct opportunities, at least it's opened up people's minds to the fact that they might be able to do something different. We have never been digital nomads. We haven't opted to move abroad and do that. Instead we keep our home base, but plenty of people do. But in the past, it seemed like it was such a risk, such an out there choice. And I think, so many people now have the opportunity to be more location independent. It's forced companies to see that having workers not in the office doesn't necessarily have an impact on productivity. And so whether people are maintaining, the job that they've always had, or a more typical career, or are taking a huge leap, I think that there's kind of this window in time where people have, been able to reflect on the practicalities of where they work and what kind of work they do, as well as, getting a little bit more philosophical about, dealing with the challenges of lockdown and reflecting on kind of the more negative things that have happened in the last year and a half, and deciding that they want to design their life differently.
yeah, absolutely. That's so great. So we kind of touched on this earlier of having like boundaries with, social media when you're traveling and with work. And I mean, when your job is social media and you're
Right.
kind of having to show up all the time to have that consistency, what are some tips that you give, especially like mental health tips for individuals whose career revolves around social media
Sure.
and having those boundaries?
I mean, it's definitely hard. It's hard to get out there and engage. And of course, like I said, dealing in the travel space with the pandemic has been a challenge to know what to say and how to say it and feel like you're doing things responsibly. Um, it's not always easy, and it's not easy to, when you're feeling down and uncertain about, things. It's hard to put a happy spin on it, publicly.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a couple things when it comes to social media. One is I try to limit my time when I can. And I really try to focus and get on and do the things that I need to do for work. And then, I catch up with my friends, but like, I don't post very much on my personal Facebook. Cause I kind of feel like I've invested all my stuff in work. And it's better for me not to end up kind of endlessly scrolling and, going down that rabbit hole, which is so easy to do. But I think you also have to try as best you can to keep it in perspective, um, take everything with a grain of salt, both the positive and the negative. Because if you get too into, oh, I had a post go viral, or, this thing went really, really well. Obviously, being successful and getting that engagement is important from a business perspective. But if you get too wrapped up in the highs, it's also really easy to get wrapped up in the lows and start chasing the likes, and it can get, it's easy to get negative quickly. I think if you're not having the success that you want to be having, both in terms of the metrics, but then also, there's the aspect of looking at what everybody else is doing. And you have to keep in mind that social media is curated, whether it's, an individual, it's a business, it's a travel blogger, whoever it may be. You're almost always seeing the rosy side of things, and not, sometimes not the full picture of what's going on. So I think you just have to try to keep that stuff in mind, and that can be difficult sometimes. And like you said, especially when it's your job and you have to be on and doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that. Those also really great tips. You're so articulate. This is great. And I mean, also keeping in mind that social media, especially Instagram, they're changing their algorithm all the time.
Oh my goodness.
You never know, like, if a post is going to do well or not. And so I love that advice of not attaching too much to the highs, so you don't attach too much to the
Yeah.
lows. Because especially, like, everybody's just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And Instagram, they rig it so that, the people that are the very top just keep growing and getting bigger and bigger. And keeping that in mind, I think that can really help people to.
Yeah. And for people who have their blog as a platform in addition to social media, it's the same thing with Google. So, the Google algorithm is always changing, just like Instagram, just like Facebook. And, the moment that you find something that works, something gets changed. So you have to get really comfortable with riding the waves on all of those channels, because there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be a change. I mean, I think it was like 2 months ago now-ish that Instagram said we're no longer a photo sharing app, and everyone was just like, oh my God, what do you mean you're no longer a photo sharing app? What do I have to do now? And, there's always the push for something new. So you might have spent, the last 7 or 8 years curating a great Instagram feed, and now you need to become a TikTok star too.
Yeah.
And now Instagram wants to be TikTok, and you also need to share something. And, I think that's why it's, if you can try to keep perspective about the success or, the harder things, because it's always going to be a wave and it's always going to change.
Absolutely. I love that. And I just, out of curiosity, have kind of a follow-up question. With your background in marketing, do you feel like that helped prepare you for this and gave you a lot of the skills that you needed to kind of succeed?
It was definitely helpful. I think that the bloggers in general who've had the, more success, because you have a little bit of a leg up, or at least in the short term when you get started, is people who come from a PR or marketing background, or in the blog world, people who are adept at coding and, website oriented stuff, because there's a lot of technical things that go into just hosting a website and making it run and making it be something that Google is happy with. So it's definitely been beneficial.
Yeah. Did you have experience with SEO and optimization and things like that to help?
I did not. I was in healthcare marketing. So I did, I did a lot of talking to doctors and patients, and photo shoots for advertisements and things like that. But we did not have as much a web focus. So that was definitely a hurdle for us to learn. And again, because it's something that's always changing, it can be difficult to keep up with the newest and best practices, for sure.
Absolutely. Did you make your website yourself, or did you hire out for it?
We started with just a regular Google platform when we started in 2008. We were on Blogspot, which is how a lot of people kind of got started. But when we realized that was not going to be the best thing for us long term, we did hire somebody to formulate our new site. But that has changed so many times over the years. There used to be a lot of, bells and whistles and really pretty designs and all kinds of like interactive, widgets and whatnots. But, so many of the designs, and for speed reasons, Google in particular has wanted people to like strip stuff down. So stuff is not nearly as complicated and over designed as it used to be. So it's been easier for us to kind of take more of that on, because it doesn't really require quite as many design skills or, technical things in that way. So
yeah, I love that.
We probably had 5 or 6 different iterations of the site over the years.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, your ability to adapt, that's probably why you're able to maintain it and to grow and to keep doing it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be you have to be really adaptable for sure. I mean, if for people who are, and you have to be in it for the long term, like I say, because,
Yeah.
one day something will work and it'll take off and it'll go really well. And the next day, the powers that be, whether in social media or search, will decide, oh, we need to tweak this thing. And the thing that has been working for you really well for X number of years, all of a sudden doesn't work anymore. And so
Yeah.
you have to, it's, early on there was, and I guess there still sort of is, this idea of like passive income. Like all you have to do is like put it out there and it will just go forever. And that's not the way that things are. You have to be willing to, you have to find those trusted sources of information, because everybody has an ebook to sell you or a class or something, and half the time the people that are trying to sell you something are making money because they're able to sell you something, not because they had some sort of special sauce that made them, completely successful. So you have to find the sources that you really trust when those changes happen, to know how to adapt and reverse and move from Instagram being a photo sharing app to, needing to do reels and stories and, all of the different things that you have to do these days.
Absolutely. That's so great. Thank you so much. So with that, I mean, what advice would you give to somebody who's just starting a blog today?
I would definitely say learn SEO. That's the biggest thing. And then I think carefully about your topic. Ideally, you would pick a niche that you can really develop some authority in and develop a lot of content around, to do well in search and to build up that authority. You need to become a trusted source. So you have to have a certain amount of information to share around a singular topic. I think it is harder and harder these days for people to start sort of, more general lifestyle blogs, even general travel blogs. Those kinds of things that can be difficult. But if you can focus down, it often is a quicker path to success. I think, like I said, finding those trusted sources of information is really important too, because everybody has something to sell you. Everybody has an opinion. And just because something worked for, this really famous, successful blogger doesn't mean that it's going to work that well for you. A lot of people are successful because they've been at it a long time and they've done a few of the right things, and the wrong things that they've done are outweighed. But if you may unknowingly follow the wrong thing just because, you think, this person is really successful and they're doing this, so therefore I should do that. It doesn't always work that way. So you got to find the people whose advice is, I guess, you got to find the trusted sources.
Awesome. That's so great. Thank you. So in what ways has Tailwind helped your blog and your business?
We have been really active Pinterest users for probably, I don't even know, 7, 8, 9 years. I mean, a really long time. So having a tool like Tailwind that makes the scheduling easy, makes us able to work it around our schedule, helps us target the right times to post, and gives, reminders about when you've shared something maybe a couple too many times or not shared something enough, kind of having those reminders and that ease has definitely made things a lot easier, because, I don't have to make sure that I'm online at 3:24 because that's when my audience is there. I don't have to try to be on at 9:30 on Saturday morning because that's the time that it says, most of my audience is around, those kinds of things. So I have the ability to work it in, as part of my day and part of my schedule when I can, as opposed to sort of letting those algorithms, make the decisions for me.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Which Tailwind feature is your favorite and why?
I really like the communities, because it helps surface a lot of content that I might not otherwise find, just, in my regular Pinterest feed. It's also a great way to be able to share stuff with more people, because you're in a targeted community with a certain topic and that, what's being shared is good information. And so it's easy to kind of go through and schedule those things. And it's definitely helped us reach more people.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you. And my last question, what's next for Travel Addicts?
Well, that's a hard one, kind of given everything like we were
Yeah.
talking about. We had hoped that we would be in a position to be traveling a little bit more right now. But I think we've got a little bit more time before getting out on the road, as you know, feels like a good thing to be doing. So one of the things that we've done, in addition to, I mean, luckily we've had a lot of trips that we haven't had the time to write about in the past. So we've been kind of catching up
That's
over the
so
course of the
great.
last year or so. But we took the opportunity to actually start a new site. So we've started a site that's focused on our general area. It's called Guide to Philly, and it's literally a guide to Philadelphia and the metro area. So that's kind of given us a place to focus. And like I said, you know, it's a little bit more focused topic. And so we can build some authority around that because we've lived here for more than 15 years. But it's been really nice to have something to focus on and somewhere to put our energy. And it's given us a reason to explore our own area a little bit more. So it's been exciting, you know, and necessary to stay close to home, but also an exciting project to be working on at the same time.
I love that. That shows, again, what we're talking about, like the adaptability that, you know, even with everything going on, you're still finding something to do and finding a way to make an impact and have your voice be heard and be an authority. That's very, very admirable.
And it's been nice to have something positive, you know, to focus on and somewhere to funnel our energies. So it's been good.
Yeah. That's so awesome. I'm so excited, so happy for you. And is that new website, is it live yet?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It is. Awesome. I will make sure to link that in the blog post as well then.
Sure.
But yeah, well, thank you so much.
Thank
It
you.
was so great meeting you.
You too.
Have a good day.
Bye.